Bonjour, I am Indy, and this is Out of the Trenches, where I sit here in the chair of wisdom and I answer all of your questions about the First World War. Okay, Kaiserschlacht writes, "Good day, mates. I was pondering flamethrowers today." As you do, I suppose, and was wondering if you could perhaps shed some light on the organization of flamethrower units in the German army. Well, you're in luck. Just a few weeks ago, we came across the memoirs of Major Redemann, the father of the German flamethrower units. We might do another special on German Special Forces, so I'll give you a little appetizer here, I guess. In his book, The History of the German Flammenwerfertruppe, he speaks of his men as a carefully selected and excellently trained and guided elite group of soldiers. In fact, the name Stormtroop was coined at first with regards to the flamethrower units, seeing that their tactical usefulness was in attacking enemy fortifications head-on. The number of men involved in such troops often depended on the objective, the expected resistance, and the equipment used. The bigger flamethrowers had to be operated by a small team of up to 5 people, while the smaller ones could be carried and used by 1 or 2 people. And we talked about the weapon specifics already in another Out of the Trenches. Redemann was very realistic about the effects and limitations of the weapon. He knew that 100 liters of flammable oil could be spent in just 45 seconds. So it had to be a weapon of surprise, force, and awe. Like stormtroops, the flamethrower groups had to approach the enemy trenches as closely as possible unseen, and then wait for the perfect moment. Then the attack had to be powerful and violent, immediately engaging and panicking the enemy. Their organization was pretty similar to the stormtroops. It attracted young, fit, and aggressive men who had no fear of handling dangerous weapons. Once they proved their worth, they were rewarded with the official symbol of the unit, the skull. Zachary Weiss writes, "Hello, Indy and the whole Great War team. We often hear about prisoner numbers in the thousands or tens of thousands. How did the forces secure those large numbers of prisoners and transport them to POW camps without weakening their frontline forces? How many prisoners would there typically be per soldier escorting them?" Well, the number of prisoners was kind of impossible to predict. Like a nighttime raid might yield 2 or maybe even up to 10 prisoners. Okay, that was kind of predictable. But in the aftermath of a big attack, you might end up with 500 to 5,000 prisoners. And in the pictures, you see only a handful of soldiers, sometimes even just older men from the military police, who guarded large groups of prisoners with only like a rifle. Usually 1 guard for a dozen prisoners. So you might think, well, why didn't the prisoners just overwhelm the guards since they outnumber them? And the answer for that is actually as simple as it is as hard to substantiate. The men, the prisoners, they had no stomach for a fight anymore. I mean, the will to fight is bound to the morale of a soldier. Throughout history, once an army was routed, once cohesion was lost to confusion, and once human emotions like defeatism and fear had gripped the soldier's heart, there was no coming back. That's the main reason why 1 soldier with like an imposing bayonet could guard a large group of former enemies. But there are, of course, reports of prisoners trying to escape, of struggles against the guards, when prisoners attacked the guards and took their weapons from them. But those incidents were few and were severely punished. Nicholas Jensen says, "Hi, Indian team. Really love the show, and I've been a supporter for almost a year now. Okay, my question is about artillery fuses during the Great War. Did they only use point detonating fuses during the entire war, or did they eventually come up with a different fuse, say a timed fuse or something else to counteract the mud and still allow the shell to explode?" No. All armies went to war with different kinds of fuses, right? And they would develop new ones along the way. Most heavy artillery units were outfitted with percussion fuses, since they were intended to break walls and fortifications with high explosive rounds on impact. Delayed percussion fuses, which detonated the shell after a short time period after impact, were used for gas shells and rounds that were intended to penetrate barricades first and then explode. Another common fuse was the time fuse. Shrapnel rounds were the main ammunition for the field guns at the beginning, right? For the destructive anti-personnel rounds to work, they had to time the fuses with regard to distance and projectile speed with a clockwork mechanism so that the shell would explode in the air over the ground, right? One example for the development of fuses was the British 106, the number 106. Now this was especially designed to destroy barbed wire barricades, and it was in response to the disastrous beginnings of the Battle of the Somme. The fuses in high explosive shells used in the summer of 1916, like at the Somme, they were flawed. They would bury the shell too far in the ground before they would burst, right? Against fortifications, this is fine. But it would leave barbed wire intact in a lot of cases, or if it hit muddy, swampy ground, it just wouldn't explode at all. The number 106 was, quite simply, a highly sensitive percussion fuse. It had a little hammer inside the nose cone that would activate the fuse as soon as it was pushed inside by impact. But, okay, this is actually a really big topic. You also had things like super quick percussion fuses or complex multi-effect fuses. We could talk for hours about this. Maybe we will one day, right? If you'd like to learn more about German stormtroop tactics and development during the First World War, you can click right here for our special about that. And you should also check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and our subreddit. See you next time.